China is driving international patent applications to record highs, closing in on long-time leader, the U.S. My special guest tonight is Francis Gurry, the Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization. He will be joining us live from Geneva. And as Vladimir Putin gets re-elected for his fourth presidential term, what geopolitical obstacles are ahead for Russia? My interview with a Russian analyst while I was in Moscow. Welcome to The Point. I'm Li Xin. China jumped from third place to second place for international patent applications filings in 2017, surpassing Japan and closing in on the U.S., which has been the long-time leader. That's according to the latest UN report on innovation. On March the 21st, the World Intellectual Property Organization, or WIPO, released its annual statistics on the use of its intellectual property services, patent, trademark and industrial designs. Figures show U.S.-based applicants filed nearly 56,600 patent applications, followed by applicants from China with almost 49,000, and then by Japan with just over 48,000. Germany and the Republic of Korea ranked 4th and 5th. Among the top 15 countries, China is the only one to have recorded double-digit annual growth of over 13% in 2017. In fact, China has now posted growth higher than 10% every year since 2003. Huawei and ZTE, two Chinese tech companies, were the top filers of international patent applications last year, followed by Intel, Mitsubishi and Qualcomm. This is indeed very positive news for Asian, especially Chinese applicants. So what do these numbers tell us about innovation in today's world? How is the current trend projected to evolve in the near future? And what has made it possible for Chinese applicants to grow so fast for so long? I'm pleased to be joined live from the UN office in Geneva by Dr. Francis Gurry, Director General of WIPO, the UN agency that is at the heart of technology and innovation. The agency assists its 191 member states in developing a balanced international IP legal framework. Dr. Gurry, thank you very much for joining us today. I just gave people a rough overview, but exactly how was China's performance in terms of international patent filings and international trademark filings for 2017?
Thank you very much, Madam Liu. It's a pleasure to be with you. Look, it's extraordinary. You've given the figures and they speak for themselves, but let us recall now that China has moved into second place, as you have said, for patent filings, and patent filings really concern the latest technology. So China is now the second largest producer and is using this as an indicator of new technology in the world, which is an extraordinary performance. You mentioned these growth figures. Let's recall also that since 2003, China has recorded double-digit, two-figure growth in international patent applications every year. So it's really an exceptional performance in the area of trademarks. And so trademarks, here we're talking about brands. And we know that already a number of Chinese brands have become global brands. You've mentioned two of them in the patent field, in the technology field. There are others that we all know, Chinese global brands, and this is an extraordinary evolution. In terms of international trademark filings then, which are the legal protection for brands, we see that China has moved into third position behind the United States and Germany in terms of numbers of international trademark applications. The growth last year was 36% from China, so this is extraordinary, and we're seeing the take-up now as Chinese enterprises look to export markets as well as the domestic markets. Then international brands, global brands, become more and more important. So all in all, an extraordinary performance.
Now, you have spoken about the changing geography of innovation from west to east. Is that still the case? What do you mean by this? And what do the figures look like?
Yeah. So, yes, this is still very much the case, and this is a persistent trend that we've seen in the course of the last 10 years in particular, but 20 years overall, I would say. So if you take international patent applications, which I said are an indicator of the latest and the best technology coming out of the world, Asia is now the origin of 49% of them. And if you go back nearly 10 years to 2007, you see that Asia then was the origin of 27%. Now, 49% coming from Asia, 25% from Europe, 25% from the United States of America. This is an extraordinary evolution. Of course, it's in line with demographic trends. The center of population is increasingly Asia. It is Asia. The center of economic production is increasingly Asia. And very importantly now, the center of technology production is increasingly Asia. And that speaks of the future. This is an eye to the future, because this new technology coming on are the products of tomorrow. And we see that the science and technology base and capacity and performance in Asia is rising all the time, led by China, but also very strong players with Japan, the Republic of Korea, and to a lesser degree, India and Southeast Asia. But overall, this is the center of gravity now for technology production in the future.
Well, patent applications is one thing, IP protection is another. How would you qualify China's IP protection and enforcement efforts compared with China's efforts in the past?
Well, look, again, I have only praise, because China enacted its patent law in 1984, so we're only 34 years away from that, and it now has the largest patent office in the world. It's the second largest filer of international patent applications. That's an extraordinary evolution over a relatively short period of time. And you can repeat that exercise when you look at branding, which is, as I said, reputation and image in global markets. And it's also the case for designs, which is the external appearance of products. So it's an extraordinary performance to build this infrastructure, and I would say also make two other points. In terms of enforcement, I've visited the Supreme People's Court. I've visited the Specialized IP Court in Shanghai, in Beijing. These are world-class facilities. You know, this is world-leading facilities. Now, China is a very big country, as I don't need to tell you. It's a very diverse country. And building the infrastructure of a country as large as China, geographically as large, with 1.4 billion, I think, people, is quite a task, and some time is needed, but there are some absolutely splendid and leading facilities that we see in it. And I'd say the other thing, if I may, that is very impressive about intellectual property in China is that there is a strategic vision and leadership from the top in China. And that concerns science, technology, first of all, building scientific and technological capacity, innovation, which is new products and new services, or new technology entering into the economy, and intellectual property, whose role then is to protect the competitive advantage that is given by that innovation. And so that sequencing and that vision of how this fits together is extraordinarily coherent in China, and as I said, led from the top.
You have been the WIPO Director General since 2008. During your 10-year tenure, how would you describe China's evolution with respect to IP?
Look, it's going from strength to strength. So now I think, if I may recall, back when I started in 2008, I had the privilege of meeting the then Prime Minister, Mr. Wen Jiabao. The first words he said to me were, intellectual property will be the basis of competition in the future. And I think that vision has been reflected consistently by the Chinese leadership. There is an acute awareness that intellectual property protects the competitive advantage of innovation, that innovation is the source of, one of the principal sources, if not the principal source of economic growth, job creation. Let's remember the enormous task of creating jobs that there is in the Chinese economy, and maintaining a competitive edge in an increasingly globalized and intensely competitive economy. So over the course of the 10 years now that I've been in my current position, we see this vision consolidated. We see it's radiating across the new areas of technology, for example, artificial intelligence, in which there is a major strategic government position, Chinese position, advanced manufacturing, the life sciences. It's radiating, as I said, the clean energy, renewable energy sector, radiating right across the economy. So it's a quite remarkable performance.
And finally, I have about 30 seconds left. There is a WIPO office in China which opened in 2014. You mentioned briefly about it. How would you comment on the progress the office, or the role the office has played over the past 3 years?
We have some wonderful colleagues in our WIPO China office. They have reached out, as I said earlier, and as you know very well, China is a vast country. So we've reached out in Beijing, but beyond Beijing, beyond Shanghai, right across the country, and we've seen extraordinary take-up. My colleagues have been organizing, making presentations at 200 events in the course of the last 2 years. This attracts immediate audience of some 10,000 people, but that audience is expanded. They've done a wonderful job, and we've seen the use of the international patent applications by China grow by 60% in the last 2 years, and of international trademark applications grow by 75% in the last 2 years. So our presence in China is vital to us in reaching out to the Chinese market, and I hope it is of some assistance to the Chinese enterprises and users of our services.
Dr. Francis Gurry, we have to leave it there. You had Director General of the World Intellectual Property Organization, Dr. Francis Gurry. And here is my point, my personal commentary. If the current trend continues, China is projected to overtake the US within 3 years as the largest source of applications filed via the WIPO. We have to be clear-minded, though. A big patent applicant country is not necessarily equaling to a strong patent applicant country. In terms of per capita figures, China is still lagging behind the US, Japan and other countries. If you look at the ranking of educational institutions, the top 10 are all located in the US, which is also thought-provoking. But the rapid rise of domestic patent application filings is a trend which is still remarkable, especially given that China has been registering double-digit growth for the past 15 years, despite the relative slowdown of the country's GDP growth. In fact, China's investment in R&D has topped the world, a prime factor in the rise of innovation capability of the country, and why that's projected to continue in the near future. So don't be surprised to find more and more innovative products and ideas coming from China. Nobody has a monopoly on innovation. You're watching The Point. We'll be back right after this. As Vladimir Putin begins his next term, tensions between Russia and the West keeps escalating, facing accusations to have meddled in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, a domestic spat with the West over a spy-killing scandal, and more sanctions imposed by the U.S. Russia's international relations are at a crucial moment. Reviving Russia's domestic economy and job prospects will be some major hurdles domestically. So how will Putin manage pressure from both outside and within Russia and stand his ground against international scrutiny? How could the so-called hybrid attacks on Russia influence the way forward? And will frayed ties with the West ever be amended? Earlier, I spoke with Sergai Markov, the director of the Institute of Political Studies in Moscow and a member of the Public Chamber of Russia and Belarus. I started by asking him for his comments on the relationship between Russia and the West at this moment.
Russia and the West has very bad relationship. More specifically, Western countries attacking Russia, and they have hybrid war against Russia. Russia don't want to be in hybrid war with the West. Russia tried to avoid. Of course, Russia protect itself, but Russia don't attack Western countries. So it's a ridiculous thing. So there is very big difference compared with Cold War period between Soviet Union and Western coalition, because those time both sides attacked each other. Now we have only Western countries attacking Russia, and Russia just protecting.
You're talking about a hybrid war. What do you mean by that?
Hybrid war, I meaning that Western countries who want to crush Russia and not to allow Russia to be a great power again, Western countries afraid to use military forces because they know that Russia is a great fighter and Russia nuclear superpower. That's why Western countries choose another direction of attack. First of all, it's political attacking and attempt of political isolation of Russia. Secondly, it's personal attacks against Vladimir Putin, or they're calling him guilty for everything. Even if it will be cold weather in London, I think sometimes they will call Putin responsible for this. We have plenty of joke over this issue. And also, Western countries try to undermine economic development by economic sanction, and Western countries want to undermine political stability by sponsoring their political agent inside Russia and by sponsoring non-government organizations and using them for destabilization. During this election, Western countries try to undermine the legitimacy of presidential elections by creating image that it was some violation. Nevertheless, that everybody knows that Vladimir Putin is very strongly supported by absolute majority of the nations.
How do you see the relationship between Russia and the United States developing in 2018?
United States is the leader of Western coalitions who are attacking Russia. But at the same time, we believe that we, Russia, not have a better relation with American people. Because American people don't want to repeat new Cold War with no reason. Because there are no Soviet communists who is trying to make communist empire in the whole world. Then also we don't have better relations with President Donald Trump, because Donald Trump wants to improve relationship, but some combinations so-called deep state, which include, first of all, governmental functionaries, they try to prevent such kind of improving relations, and they want to attack Russia again.
What is going to President Putin's strategy in foreign policy to deal with this kind of hybrid, in your word, hybrid attack from the West?
I think the strategy of Vladimir Putin, first of all, not to attack Western countries, because we don't want victory. We want the peace and cooperation, but not a victory. Western countries, not like German Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler who attacked us. We believe that we can re-establish positive relationship after Western countries tired from such hybrid war, and after they decided that they are not able to crush Russia. Also, Russian strategy include to develop relations with other countries which are not part of the Western coalitions, with China, India, Brazil, South Africa, all other countries. Also, Russia trying to establish relations with our friends in the Western countries, because we know there's a lot of political parties, public figures in Western countries who believe that this attack against Russia is foolish.
Well, even within the top echelons of the power in Russia, some people believe that what Russia did in Crimea, for instance, was a bad mistake, and basically the consequences are still being felt. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely not. First of all, rejoining of Crimea is supported by approximately 90% of Russian people. And it was salvation of Crimea from terror of neo-Nazi junta, which took power in Ukraine with support of the American intelligence service. I strongly believe that people who run Ukraine, not the government, even not, of course, not democratic government. This is junta of war criminals and outside agents. And we mostly criticize Vladimir Putin that he didn't enter Russian troops to Ukrainian territory to save Ukraine from those power of terrorists which Ukraine has right now. Just don't believe that Ukraine is a normal country. No, this is a country where power captured by terrorists.
How is the situation going to be handled in the near future, however? Because after all, whether Russia believes it did the right thing or not, the international sanction has badly impacted Russia's economy.
The sanctions had some influence, but not too much. Russia, great power, and used to live under the sanction of Western countries during many, many years during its history. Even in Soviet time, Soviet Union was under the sanctions every time. But nevertheless, it developed great economy. So we have a lot of other countries with whom we can cooperate. We can develop high-tech industries ourselves based on Russian science and based on the technological cooperation with other countries. And we think that we will be ready to recover our country and to push it forward to the more high-tech. It's mostly our responsibility. It's not so much depend on the sanctions.
But even if the United States might put additional sanctions against Russia, as we've just seen in a couple of days ago?
We're ready. If they even switch off SWIFT for the banks, for example, if they even will try to switch off access to internet from Russia, we're ready. We're ready to any deepness of the hybrid war against Russia.
Do you think that President Putin is going to be tougher in his new term in terms of foreign policy?
I don't think so. I think Vladimir Putin just will continue those policies which he had during the previous his term. His major role will be to not to fight against Western countries. His major role in the new term will be to give big impact to the development of high-tech sectors of economy, and also to create the system of the replacing the power. Because I think in 6 years from now, Vladimir Putin, according to Constitution, should give power to the another person who will be the Russian president. And to create this system during these 6 years, it will be major Putin's goal.
How do you look at such view as it was expressed by our previous guest on the show, that there is this division, this fighting between different opinion camps within the Putin administration? One is the party of peace, one is the party of war, and one side would want less spending on the military to develop the economy, and the other party would want the opposite, and President Putin somehow caught in the middle. What is your comment on such opinion?
Russian people has different views. We have difficult discussion how to develop the economy, but only a very small part of this, and we call it peace column, suggested that Russia should capitulate for developing the economy. Also, because we don't believe that if we will capitulate, Western countries will help us to develop economy. On contrary, probably they will destroy Russian economy at all. No, we want, first of all, to preserve our independence, and based on this independence, we are going to develop our economy. How to develop? It's another discussion. Some of the people saying that we should rely more on the middle-sized business, and other people saying that no, for the breakthrough we should rely more on the big corporation, including governmentally owned corporations. Some of the people saying that we should, in our development, should cooperate more with such countries like China, India, and some others, South Korea, but some other people, no, we shouldn't too much think about cooperation with another country, but we should build our economic alliance, Eurasian Union.
Right.
So there are a lot of discussion, but those who suggested, oh, let's capitulate to the in face of the United States and believe that everything will be fine with this, no.
What about this kind of ideological struggle, let's say, that is happening between Russia and the West, especially as we see in the media, the kind of tit-for-tat attack. Do you think that is the right way it should be? I mean, how can people better communicate with each other? Because I think this is vital.
I agree with you. I don't think that we have so much big ideological difference between Russia and the West. Maybe we a little bit pay more attention to the conservative values, traditional values. We respect maybe religious a little bit more. But also we have same kind of people, a lot, millions and hundreds of millions such kind of people with same values as well.
What's the problem then?
It's more propaganda. To my regret, most of the media now already not place for understanding, but more place for misunderstanding. It's more place for propaganda. I think most of the Western medias are politically corrupt, lost independent, and part of the big propagandistic machine. Same as with most of the Russian media, frankly speaking.
How do you look at the world order, or in President Putin's mind, what should the world be looking like 50 years from now?
Oh, from Vladimir Putin, it's very easy to say. Vladimir Putin believes that, first of all, it should be a multipolar world. And secondly, he believes that sovereignties of the countries should be respected. And if a democracy, it's not when government follow demand from Washington. Democracy, if government follow political will of own people. He also believes there should be rule of law. Probably Vladimir Putin almost alone who believes that international law can really exist in the modern world, because I think most of the Western countries leaders doesn't respect international law absolutely.
In terms of relationship between China and Russia, what is the future in your eyes?
I think Russia and China, it's two giants who moving step by step to each other, having only one big interest. We don't want to allow United States and Western coalition to be imperialist hegemony over us. So we are protecting ourselves.
That was Sergai Markov, the director of the Institute of Political Studies in Moscow and a member of the Public Chamber of Russia and Belarus. I think it is important to try and see the world through the lens of different people before we can possibly understand how they act or react to situations. In the mainstream Western media, Russia annexed Crimea. In Russia, people celebrate its reunification with the fatherland. In the mainstream Western media, Putin is often portrayed as a dictator. In the eyes of many Russians, he is the one who has led the country through difficult times. Misunderstanding goes both ways, and to listen is the first step, whether one agrees or not. That is all for this edition of The Point with me, Liu Xin. As always, follow us on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with LX. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. We've got the